Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Monday. It's September 18th, and you know what that means. The voice of the Hoosiers, Don Fischer, joins us after a tough weekend for the Hoosier football squad as they travel to Indianapolis, Lucas Oil Stadium, taking on the Louisville Cardinals and former Purdue coach Jeff Brom in a game that turned out to be a pretty epic ending. Just did not go the way that the Hoosiers would like to have seen that go, Don. It was certainly a tale of two halves.
That it was, Jim. There's no question. Indiana kind of laid an egg in the first half, especially defensively. Couldn't get stops. Too many big plays given up. Obviously, the first one, that 85-yard pass play that gave them their first score. Louisville, we're talking about now. Plummer to Jamari Thrash. And that kind of started the slide down the tube, so to speak, for this Indiana football team, because defensively, that was probably the strength of this ball club after a couple of ball games of the season early on, and you thought the defense was not going to have those kinds of issues, but they certainly did in the first half of this ball game, and the offense couldn't get going either. So, there's no question the first half was dismal, and at halftime, I think most everybody was feeling like, man, this was a fool's gold we've been talking about here for the first 2 weeks of the season. Fortunately, everything changed with the kickoff at the start of the second half when Tom Allen and his crew decided we're going to gamble a little bit here if we can see it. And actually, Tom told me before the ball game that if they might have a couple of trick plays up their sleeve, because you always expect Jeff Brom to have a few of those. And Tom said, we may try an onside kick. We may have a fake punt going here. I said, really? He said, yes, sir. Well, it turned out that the onside kick was exactly what Indiana needed, because to start the second half, they kicked that ball to the side and Indiana recovered it. And the next thing you know, we're in the end zone after a nice little drive led by David Jackson, who really came on strong in the second half. And, of course, the receiving core was tremendous in this ball game, because a lot of his throws were a little bit high, but guys were pulling him in left and right. And you really had to feel good about what Indiana was able to accomplish in the second half of the contest. Unfortunately, way too many points given up in the first half and with those big plays.
Yeah, and the fact that Taven missed a few of those passes high is still pretty amazing, because his accuracy overall throughout the game in totality was pretty damn good. He was 24 of 34. So he hit, and for 299 yards, of course, a lot of that coming in the second half, but he looked smooth throughout, which in his first true start has got to be a very positive sign for Indiana. The offense looked good for the most part in some degrees, but in the defense, Tom Allen was asked about the difference between the first and a half, and he kind of alluded to the fact that there was a lot of holding going on in the first half by Louisville. But, man, the second half, they shut that vaunted Cardinal offense down, which I would have thought that to be next to impossible.
Yeah, based on what we saw in the first half and what Louisville was able to do in their first couple of ball games, averaging, 600 yards a ball game or plus, 600-plus yards a game. It was just crazy how much they had done offensively. But Indiana was able to stuff them in the second half, which was a really impressive performance at that side of the football. But the biggest, and to me, when you look at this ball game, there were so many opportunities, and I shouldn't say so many. There were definitely opportunities for Indiana to turn things around. Didn't get it done in the first half, but in the second half, the momentum shift, the change in the thinking process or the mentality of the football team, I think completely changed on the onside kick. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Had they not recovered that onside kick, Louisville's in position to score another touchdown to start the second half and make it 28-0. But they didn't. They got the ball. They went down and scored right away. The whole complexion of the football game changed at that point, and it made I think it gave confidence to this Indiana football team that they could get the job done. Unfortunately, when they didn't score the touchdown to tie the ball game with less than 5 minutes to go in the contest, that just kind of, I think it just signals the problem that Indiana's had over the years. And that's that issue with not being able to finish football games sometimes.
Yeah, and one area where you'd have to look at when you look at the statistics is the running game. Still not at all what you want to see. Total rushing 58 yards out of 5 guys and 27 attempts, barely over 2 yards a carry. That is still a glaring problem for this team, and they have a good running backs room.
They do. You're absolutely right. There's nothing wrong with the running backs that they have. Jalen Lucas is spectacular, as everyone knows. He's very capable of turning a game around just with his skill set. Josh Henderson is as dependable and inside the tackles runner as you're going to find. They gave him the football, and they're trying to score at the 1 foot line. Yeah, obviously, he didn't get it in, but I don't think it was the right play call. That's my own personal opinion. It's no reflection on Walt Bell or anybody else. Just that didn't work. I would have gone with a quarterback sneak and had 2 guys shoving David Jackson from behind to get him into the end zone. Because that, to me, when you got a foot or just inches to go, you've got to get that ball in. And I think that's the negative on the play call that was, because Josh Henderson takes the handoff 2 or 3 yards back behind the line of scrimmage now, and now he's got to leap over that group, and obviously that just didn't work. So, long story short, Indiana didn't make the play that they needed to make. They end up losing the ball game, but it was a tremendous turnaround performance, and from that standpoint, you got to take some positives.
Yeah, and one place where we do disagree is I am going to blame Walt Bell on that call, because there's no way when you are that close and you have a quarterback that Taven's a strong kid. He's a big, strong kid, and when all you have to do is crack that seal, he could have. Not that I'd want him seeing reaching, but if he wanted to take it and just leap, he could have just with his reach crossed the plane, I would imagine. But I've watched that play over and over, and man, oh man, that the quarterback sneak would have worked all day and twice on Sunday instead of a play that took 2.5 seconds to develop. I was more than a little shocked, as is everybody else, which it's easy to second guess. I get that. Tom Allen said that, but you just, nobody calls that play when you're that close, and with good reason. And it's going to be a huge difference for Indiana in this season, because now that's a game that they potentially could have won and get themselves a little bit closer to reaching bowl eligibility.
Yep. Ifs and buts and candies and nuts.
Yep. Boy, oh boy.
but it didn't happen. Indiana didn't win the ball game. Obviously, if Indiana scores a touchdown there, they just tie it, unless they're going to go for 2, which I would have doubted, because Indiana had so much momentum in the second half, and that would have just continued that momentum had they scored there. And my gut is that Tom would have gone for the extra point to tie the ball game and hope to get the ball back before the game ended to have another opportunity. But we'll never know, because it didn't happen. All we do know is that Indiana gave themselves a chance. It didn't come to fruition. Now they've got a battle, and they're going to have games like that probably for the rest of this year, and they're going to have to find a way to get it done in situations like that, because I think they're going to have more of those based on the schedule that we see up there. There are games that they can win. There are teams that we thought were going to be really good that so far have just looked kind of mediocre. It's kind of who elevates their game the rest of the season that's going to come out of there with the wins, the kind of wins that you're looking for, and that can give you bowl eligibility. And Indiana's got to continue to get better.
Yeah, and that, other than that 85-yard touchdown, that was really a catch and run, or well, I guess it was half and half. But if you take that away, that's the Indiana defense holds Louisville to a really substandard number. They threw for 238 yards total. That's with that 85-yard touchdown. So if you take that off there, you're holding Louisville to 150 yards or so throwing the ball. That would have been an exceptional day. They'd had some problems stopping the running attack. They gave up 184 yards on the ground to Louisville.
Right, and when I look at it, I look at it this way, in the sense that this Indiana football team at this juncture, especially on the defensive side of the football, still looking to find themselves a little bit, and you're going to have some ball games where you're going to give up some yards in the rushing game. You're going to have some games where you give up some yards in the passing game. It's not the key here is to not give up big plays. And yeah, the 85-yarder was one big one, but there were 5 other plays in that ball game that gave up way too many yards. That stops could have been made that were not made, and that's what caused you concern in the first half of the game. Because if you looked at the defense in the second quarter, they had their heads down. They didn't look like they were going to be able to tough it out. To me, at least that's the kind of the vibe that I got watching these guys coming off the field after plays and touchdowns and those kinds of things. I don't want to say that they gave up. I don't think they gave up, but I just think that they didn't have that confidence level that you have to play on the defensive side of the football. It came back in the second half, no question about it. So obviously, whatever adjustments Tom and the defensive side of the football made, they got it done. But again, the biggest play of that ball game was the onside kick. If that not have happened, if it would have gone the other way, I think this season would be really something that you could put in the trash bin because I think it would have hurt a lot.
I agree with you. And the fact that they were down 21-0, period, and found the wherewithal to put themselves in a position to tie that game was surprising and a good sign, because that's not something that we see a lot from Indiana football, especially against a team that of this caliber. But they did do that. They did come out. They made the fight, and they were in a position to tie the game. So that's something that if you have a team that can do that, you've got to have confidence in going forward, if they can carry that confidence forward and not let the loss hang over their head.
Right, exactly. And look, this is a football team. It is in transition. I mean, we've already pointed out ad nauseum how many transfer portal guys are on this roster and in the game, that play in the ball game. I mean, you have 23 of 24 transfer portal guys who were supposedly on the depth chart in going into this season. And I say on the depth chart of the top 50, 55 players on this team. And most of those guys are all playing in the third game of the season. So, and the guys that aren't, or that some of them that aren't, have been injured and just not able to play. So I just think there's some real positives coming out of this ball game, even though it was a loss. And that's what we have to look at in Indiana. We've got to try to look at the positive side of things. And right now, there's still lots to talk about in that regard.
Yeah, they have a team coming up this week, Akron, that should be, again, another get-right game. They played Kentucky last week. I was actually busy watching a ton of games, and I meant to watch that one, and I'm not gotten around to doing so yet. So I didn't see what Kentucky ended up doing with Akron, but I'm sure it was not a tough one.
Well, Kentucky beat them 35-3. Actually, Akron, I thought, played what the little parts that I watched, because I did watch part of that ball game just to see, get some names and get a feel on what kind of team Akron was. And Akron battled Kentucky. It wasn't just like it was a 35-point blowout, 35-3 blowout all the way through. Akron battled a little bit. They're a team that's capable. They've got a second-year coach who's trying to change the culture for the Zips. And I think he does a good job with the play calling, and they've got some skilled athletes. So yeah, it's not going to be a blowover like it was against Indiana State, but it's still a team that Indiana could and should beat. And obviously, we'll have to wait and see on Saturday how it all plays out, because, again, we're playing in a night game, so it's a 7:30 kickoff, which is not our favorite thing to have to deal with. But nevertheless, it is the schedule that we're given, and we will do it.